Since the dawn of civilization, the concept of the apocalypse has always fascinated and terrified humanity. Stories of impending doom and final judgment echo in virtually every culture. But it is in the Bible, specifically the book of Revelation, that these narratives take on the most vivid and terrifying contours. However, an unsettling question arises. What if these plagues weren't just symbolic stories or something reserved for the distant future? What if, in fact, we were living these prophecies here and now in the 21st century? Think about it. Pandemics sweep away entire nations. Hunger still devastates millions of people. Armed conflicts do not cease, but become more destructive by the day. Not to mention the increasing environmental destruction that threatens the very survival of the planet. Aren't the plagues of Revelation just ancient texts written to scare or warn past generations? Or is it possible that each page carries a frighteningly literal meaning for the modern world? In chapter 6 of the Apocalypse, we find the description of the four horsemen, iconic figures who bring chaos with them, the horsemen of plague, war, famine, and death. Later on, other chapters detail divine judgments that seem to resonate more and more with our day. Catastrophic floods, unprecedented wildfires, climate disasters, and a global collapse of the economy would not just be natural events or human crises. Perhaps they are the manifestations of these millennial prophecies. And then the big question: are we witnessing the literal fulfillment of Scripture, or are these events just coincidences aligned with our own self-imposed destruction? There's no denying that the world seems to be on the verge of collapse, and the parallels to biblical texts are as disturbing as they are fascinating. Our goal with this video is to dive deep into this mystery. We will explore the sacred texts, decipher the messages of the prophets, and compare these ancient writings with the events of today. Are the pandemics we face echoes of the plague night? Do endless wars point to the war night, and wouldn't hunger, which takes lives daily, be a clear evidence of the third horseman? More than that, how do these modern plagues impact our lives, and what do they say about the future? If you've ever wondered if we're living in apocalyptic times or just facing the consequences of our choices, stick around until the end. This video will not only bring you answers, but it will also lead you to reflections that you never imagined having. Get ready to connect the dots between antiquity and the present. The plagues of the apocalypse may not just be a myth, but rather a frightening portrayal of our current world. Have you ever stopped to think if the events we are experiencing today are just coincidences or the fulfillment of something much bigger and scarier? Don't miss the next few minutes of this video, where we will unravel the mysteries of the plagues of the apocalypse and their connections to the modern world. If you want to understand what this means for our future and the impact on your life, don't leave here. Enjoy and subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave your like to receive more content that challenges your worldview. Now, let's dive into this apocalyptic mystery together. The four horsemen of the apocalypse are undoubtedly one of the most iconic and terrifying images in the book of Revelation. Each of them carries with it an omen that personifies chaos and destruction. But what makes these figures so striking is their timelessness. Their meanings transcend generations, taking on forms that resonate with the challenges and crises of our time. Now, let's explore each night and what they represent in a world that seems closer and closer to collapsing. The Night of the White Horse, the Conquest, and the Deception. The first rider appears mounted on a white horse, wielding a bow and sporting a crown. For some, it symbolizes achievement. For others, the deception that precedes ruin. This figure is controversial since, while white is traditionally associated with purity and redemption, the acts of this night often lead to chaos and oppression. And if we look at today's world, it may well be among us. Consider charismatic leaders who rise to power with promises of redemption, unification, and prosperity. but who in practice foment divisions and perpetuate oppressive systems. In various parts of the world, we see the use of propaganda to manipulate public opinion, creating narratives that deceive even the most cautious. The rise of polarizing ideologies that promise definitive solutions is a direct echo of the symbology of this night. Technology also plays a key role in this new form of achievement. Artificial intelligence, for example, is transforming the world at a frightening speed, but not without a cost. Mass surveillance systems, algorithms that manipulate information, and deep fakes create a reality where deception becomes indistinguishable from the truth. Like the Knight of the White Horse, these innovations promise progress, but they may be leading humanity down a path of absolute control. The rider of the red horse. The war. Soon after, the rider appears on a red horse carrying a sword. It symbolizes war, and its impact is felt in every corner of the globe. From international conflicts between superpowers to civil wars and rebellions, the world is constantly on fire. Currently, we see growing tensions in several regions. Rivalries between powerful nations, such as the United States and China, generate an arms race that threatens global stability. Meanwhile, local wars continue to ravage communities, resulting in endless numbers of refugees and internally displaced people. These conflicts not only kill directly, but leave scars that last for generations, destroying cultures, economies, and the hope of reconstruction. Modern warfare, however, has taken on new forms. Terrorism, cyber wars, and even the manipulation of information through social networks are examples of how this night adapts to today's world. Every attack, every threat, carries the weight of the Red Knight's sword, dividing nations, peoples, and families. The Knight of the Black Horse, the Hunger. The third rider rides a black horse, holding a scale in his hands. It is the omen of hunger and scarcity. In Revelation, he speaks of a time when staple foods will be so expensive that survival will become a luxury for many. Today, we live exactly that. UN reports show that global food insecurity is at alarming levels. Climate disasters such as droughts, floods, and wildfires have destroyed crops and hampered agricultural production. In addition, wars and local conflicts prevent food distribution, leaving millions on the brink of starvation. The food crisis is also aggravated by inequality. While one part of the world wastes tons of food daily, another struggles to put a meal on the table. Food price inflation makes basic items such as wheat and rice unaffordable for the poorest populations. This is the legacy of the Black Horse Rider. A famine that is not only caused by nature, but also by greed and human mismanagement. The Knight of the Yellow Horse, Death and the Plague. Finally, we have the rider riding a yellow horse, the most feared figure of all. He brings death and pestilence with him, spreading disease and destruction wherever he goes. These days, this knight is more active than ever. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a brutal reminder of how vulnerable we are. In a matter of months, the entire world was paralyzed, millions of lives were lost, and health systems collapsed. But the coronavirus is not the only example. Other diseases such as Ebola, bird flu, and dengue fever outbreaks continue to challenge humanity. These plagues seem to emerge more frequently and intensely, as if the planet itself were sending a warning. In addition, the death caused by this night is not limited to diseases. Violence, natural disasters, and even political neglect contribute to the devastation. Every day, thousands of people succumb to hunger, war, and environmental catastrophes. It's almost impossible to ignore the connection between the Knight of the Yellow Horse and the current state of the world. The Four Horsemen are not just apocalyptic figures of the past. They are present in our daily lives, manifesting in ways that we may not immediately notice, but that are undeniably real. From technological deception to the chaos of war, from global hunger to devastating pandemics, The signs are all around us. The big question is, what will we do in the face of these demonstrations? Are we prepared to face the challenges they pose, or will we be swept away by its relentless advance? The trumpets of Revelation represent one of the most intense and disturbing moments in the book of Revelation, described in chapters 8 and 9. Each trumpet is a divine warning, announcing calamities that befall the earth and its inhabitants. But as we carefully analyze these passages, it is difficult not to make a direct connection to the events and crises of the modern world. Are these trumpets just metaphors? Or are they sounding in our day, manifesting themselves through the tragedies we witness? Let's dive deep into each of these trumpets, connecting their biblical descriptions to the realities of our time. The first trumpet, fire and blood, the destruction of vegetation. When the first trumpet sounds, Revelation describes a terrifying scene. Hail and fire mingled with blood were cast down to the earth, and the third part of the trees were burned, and all the green grass was burned. This image of devastation leads us directly to the wildfires ravaging the world with increasing intensity. In recent years, we have seen entire forests turn to ashes. The Amazon, considered the lungs of the planet, faces annual fires that destroy vital ecosystems. California, Australia, and even parts of Siberia have been the scene of unprecedented wildfires. These events not only destroy vegetation, but also release huge amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, further exacerbating climate change. And what about the blood mixed with the fire? This could symbolize the deadly impact these catastrophes have on living things. Millions of animals die in these fires, and entire communities are displaced, losing their homes, their land, and in many cases, their lives. The first trumpet may well be blowing, warning us of the dangers of a burning planet. The second trumpet, the burning mountain, the destruction on the seas. The second trumpet brings an even more apocalyptic vision. A great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea was turned to blood. The image of a burning mountain reminds us of volcanic eruptions and cataclysms that directly impact the oceans. Volcanic eruptions, such as the one at the Tonga volcano in 2022, triggered tsunamis and affected entire ecosystems. But what if we broaden this vision? The fiery mountain may also symbolize man's destructive action on the oceans. Marine pollution is a glaring example of this. Oil spills, such as the Deepwater Horizon disaster, dye the waters black and blood, killing countless marine species and devastating communities that depend on the oceans for their livelihoods. Overfishing and plastic waste disposal are also signs of a collapsing ecosystem. The cumulative impact of these human actions may well be interpreted as the blood that pollutes the seas. With each new tragedy, the second trumpet seems to sound louder, alerting us to the destruction we are wreaking on the oceans. The third trumpet, wormwood, the drinking water crisis. When the third trumpet is blown, a great star burning like a torch falls from the heavens, contaminating the rivers and water sources. This star is called wormwood, and its waters become bitter, killing many who drink them. This description resonates deeply with the global drinking water crisis we face today. The scarcity of clean water is one of the greatest challenges of the 21st century. In many parts of the world, freshwater sources are drying up, contaminated by industrial waste, pesticides, and other toxic substances. Major rivers, such as the Ganges in India and the Nile in Africa, are being degraded at an alarming rate. In addition, the impact of climate change intensifies this crisis. Prolonged droughts leave entire regions without access to clean water, forcing millions of people to migrate in search of survival. And when we talk about contaminated water, related diseases such as cholera and diarrhea become a deadly threat, especially in poor communities. Wormwood may well be a metaphor for the human actions that turn the earth's waters into sources of death. The fourth trumpet, the darkness, the darkening of the heavens. With the fourth trumpet, the book of Revelation describes a cosmic event. The third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so that the third part of them was darkened. This image of darkness can be interpreted in many ways, but one of the most alarming is the increase in air pollution. Our sky is increasingly obscured by pollution, soot, and toxic particles. Large metropolises such as Beijing, New Delhi, and São Paulo already face days when pollution is so dense that it prevents sunlight from penetrating. In addition, sand and dust storms, driven by desertification, are increasingly frequent, covering entire cities in a suffocating cloud. Another aspect to consider is cosmic events. Eclipses, meteor showers, and planetary alignments have fascinated and intrigued humanity. Although they are natural phenomena, many cultures interpret them as omens. However, the depletion of our ozone layer and the increase in global warming may be signs that we are moving towards a future in which sunlight will be less of a blessing and more of a risk. The fourth trumpet sounds like a clear warning that the heavenly balance is being threatened. The trumpets of Revelation are not mere symbols of future destruction. They may be manifesting now in ways that challenge us to rethink our impact on the planet. Every trumpet sound is a warning, an opportunity for change before it is too late. The connection between biblical texts and modern events is undeniable. Are we witnessing the fulfillment of these prophecies, or are they reflections of a cycle of destruction caused by our own hands? Are you feeling the weight of the trumpets of Revelation in our reality? The signs are everywhere, but are we ready to face them? If you want to continue exploring these prophecies and understand how they may be shaping our present and future, don't leave there. Subscribe now to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss the next episodes of this revealing series. Together, we will unravel the mysteries of the apocalypse and seek answers to these unsettling questions. Leave your comment below about what you think of these connections and pass this video on to anyone who needs to hear this message. The next block promises to deepen these reflections even more. The bowls of God's wrath, described in the book of Revelation chapter 16, are considered the climax of apocalyptic prophecies. They represent a sequence of final judgments on humanity, a point of no return in the biblical end-time narrative. These bowls are loaded with symbolism, but as we analyze each one, we realize disturbing parallels with events that have challenged the modern world. The first bowl, painful ulcers. The pouring out of the first bowl brings malignant and painful ulcers upon those who bear the mark of the beast, a symbol of alliance with evil. In the current context, this can be interpreted as a warning for skin diseases that are emerging around the world. From new dermatological conditions, the causes of which still intrigue medicine, to growing antibiotic resistance, which makes it difficult to treat infections, humanity seems to face an increasingly difficult biological battle. In addition, the increase in autoimmune diseases and severe allergies linked to environmental factors and modern lifestyles can be seen as a kind of punishment for neglecting the health of our common home, planet Earth. The second and third bowls, waters in blood. The waters turned to blood in the second and third bowls are symbols of ecological destruction. The impact of this is devastating. The sea becomes uninhabitable, and rivers and drinking water sources become lethal. In the real world, this is reflected in the dead zones of the oceans, where pollution and excess nutrients create oxygen-deprived areas, resulting in the mass die-off of marine organisms. Oil spills, which pollute oceans and rivers, in addition to making the waters unfit for life, can be interpreted as blood stains that stain the purity of God's creation. This destruction of water resources, added to the global drinking water crisis, underscores the human impact on a resource essential to life. The fourth cup, the heat of the sun. With the fourth bowl, the heat of the sun intensifies, causing burns in men. The effects of climate change, such as record-breaking heat waves and the destruction of the polar ice caps, are a reflection of this judgment. Science has warned that we are reaching a tipping point in relation to global temperatures, which can lead to devastating consequences, such as desertification, rising sea levels, and forced migrations. The intensification of ultraviolet radiation, aggravated by the depletion of the ozone layer, also contributes to this feeling of divine burn. Is extreme heat a sign that we are facing the consequences of our choices and negligence? The fifth cup. Darkness in the kingdom of the beast. The kingdom of the beast is plunged into darkness with the pouring out of the fifth bowl. This act symbolizes a collapse in the power of evil, but it can also be interpreted as social and political chaos. In a world where governments fail to protect their citizens, economic crises intensify, and extremist ideologies proliferate, this darkness seems increasingly literal. Energy blackouts, technological failures, and collapses in essential infrastructure increase the feeling of helplessness. These events reinforce the idea that humanity is on the brink of an unprecedented social disruption, where the light, both physical and metaphorical, slowly goes out. The sixth cup, preparing for Armageddon. The sixth bowl heralds the preparation for the Battle of Armageddon, a great war between the forces of good and evil. This battle is preceded by the drying up of the Euphrates River, a symbolic event that removes barriers and allows armies to assemble. In the modern world, this can be associated with international alliances and geopolitical tensions that foreshadow a global confrontation. The growing militarization of nations, the development of weapons of mass destruction, and tensions in strategic regions such as the Middle East evoke the imminence of a devastating conflict. Is Armageddon a metaphor for a war that culminates in rebirth or complete destruction? The seventh cup, the great earthquake. Finally, the seventh bowl brings thunder, lightning, and an earthquake like never before. Cities are destroyed, islands disappear, and mountains are no longer found. This final event symbolizes the complete destruction of all that has been corrupted by human sin. In fact, we see an increasing frequency of natural disasters, such as devastating earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic eruptions. These events bring with them a sense of vulnerability, reminding us that the force of nature is beyond human control. Could these disasters be omens of the last act of divine judgment? The bowls of divine wrath are, without a doubt, the severest judgments described in Revelation. Whether as symbolism or as a literal reading, the similarities between biblical plagues and contemporary events are impossible to ignore. If we are indeed witnessing the signs of the last days, the question that arises is, how can we prepare, spiritually and mentally, for what is to come? As we advance in our analysis, a question becomes inevitable. Are we living in the beginning of the end times, as described in Revelation? The idea that contemporary catastrophic events may be the manifestation of apocalyptic plagues raises profound reflections, dividing opinions between skeptics and believers. This block explores the evidence, interpretations, and implications of our modern reality through the prism of biblical prophecy. The convergence of events. Throughout history, humanity has faced devastating epidemics, brutal wars, climate disasters, and economic crises. However, what makes current events worthy of comparison with the plagues of Revelation is their simultaneity and magnitude. Never before have we seen the world so interconnected, where a simple event in one corner of the globe can set off catastrophic chain reactions. Examples abound. The COVID-19 pandemic has shaken not only global health, but also economies, supply chains, and social stability. Climate disasters such as heat waves, devastating floods, and wildfires have occurred with alarming frequency. Armed conflicts continue to tear nations apart, while geopolitical tensions create the perfect backdrop for a global confrontation. This interconnectedness of crises reflects what many interpret as a domino effect described in apocalyptic prophecies. The role of human action. While some see current events as divine acts, others attribute them to human action. The environmental destruction caused by decades of neglect and rampant exploitation of the planet is a stark example. Ocean pollution, deforestation, uncontrolled greenhouse gas emissions, and species extinction are direct results of our greed and disregard for nature. In addition, wars and economic crises are often rooted in political decisions motivated by personal or national interests. Global inequality, which leaves billions of people vulnerable to hunger, disease, and disaster, is fueled by economic systems that prioritize profit over human well-being. This reality leads us to reflect: are the plagues of Revelation a divine judgment or an inevitable consequence of our own actions? Prophecies and contemporary interpretation. Revelation is known for its symbolic language, which leaves room for various interpretations. Some scholars believe that the plagues described should not be understood literally, but rather as representations of recurring cycles of chaos and renewal throughout history. Others, however, argue that the similarities between the prophecies and current events are evidence that we are living the literal fulfillment of the sacred text. For example, the figure of the four horsemen can be seen as a metaphor for forces that have always existed: conquest, war, famine, and death, but which have now intensified to an unprecedented degree. The trumpets of judgment, with their description of natural and ecological disasters, find clear parallels in the environmental collapse we witness daily. The bowls of divine wrath, with their plagues and destruction, also echo humanity's fragility in the face of pandemics and global disasters. The information age and the collective consciousness. We live in an era where information circulates faster than ever. Events that once might have gone unnoticed now gain global attention in a matter of minutes. This amplified collective consciousness can give the impression that catastrophes are accumulating faster and more intensely than in past eras. However, this same information age allows us to better understand the causes and effects of these events. We know, for example, that many pandemics arise due to deforestation and uncontrolled interaction with natural habitats. Climate change is widely recognized as a result of human activity. Economic inequality is analyzed as a structural flaw and not just as an inevitable fate. This duality, greater understanding but also greater exposure to chaos, creates a perfect environment for prophecies to come to life in people's minds. Coincidences or signs. To skeptics, the connections between modern events and apocalyptic prophecies may seem mere coincidences. After all, the world has always faced crises, and the cyclical nature of history suggests that periods of peace and conflict alternate naturally. For believers, however, the context and intensity of these crises are clear signs that the divine plan is underway. The point is that both sides agree on one thing: we are living in a moment of extreme global fragility. Solutions to these crises require immediate action and coordination on an unprecedented scale, something that seems increasingly difficult to achieve in a divided world. The central question: are we prepared? Whether or not it is the end times, the reality is that contemporary crises require reflection and action. Are we prepared to face the challenges that accumulate in front of us? And more importantly, are we willing to change our attitudes, both as individuals and as a society, to avoid a total collapse? This reflection brings us to a crucial point: the importance of being vigilant and prepared, not only for physical disasters, but also for spiritual disasters. Whether the events we witness are indeed signs of revelation, or simply the results of our choices, the central message remains the same. We need to rethink our purpose and our impact on the world. Contemporary evidence raises more questions than answers. We may never know for sure if we are living through the plagues of Revelation or if we are simply victims of our own actions. But one thing is certain, the time to act, reflect, and seek understanding is now. After all, whether for divine or human reasons, the future of humanity is at stake. We end our journey through the plagues of Revelation with a fundamental question. What do these messages teach us about the present and future of humanity? Whether you're a staunch believer in biblical prophecy or someone who seeks answers through science and reason, it's impossible to ignore the parallels between the events described in Revelation and the challenges we face today. The meaning of plagues, warning or prophecy. The plagues described in Revelation transcend literal interpretations. They are first and foremost a wake-up call, a call to introspection, repentance, and change. For believers, each plague symbolizes not only divine judgment, but also an opportunity to recognize the need to return to God. For others, they can be seen as metaphors for crises that humanity has created and urgently needs to address. The important thing is to realize that, regardless of beliefs, there is a universal message. Our choices shape the future. The apocalypse does not need to be seen as an inevitable fate, but as a mirror that reflects our actions and their consequences. It challenges us to face our mistakes, correct our paths, and work towards a more just and sustainable world. Faith and science, parallel paths, not opposites. One of the greatest challenges of the contemporary world is the apparent disconnect between faith and science. While many see these areas as opposites, the truth is that both can complement each other. Faith offers purpose and hope, while science provides the tools to solve the problems we face. For example, climate change, often associated with the ecological plagues of the apocalypse, requires both practical action and a shift in mindset. Science gives us the data and the solutions, while faith inspires us to care for the planet as a sacred gift. Together, they motivate us to act with urgency and intention. Collective responsibility. Another crucial point of the plagues of Revelation is that they are not isolated problems. These are global challenges. This means that the solution requires collective responsibility. Governments, businesses, communities, and individuals need to work together to address crises such as economic inequality, environmental destruction, and social instability. This collective responsibility also includes recognizing that our actions have lasting impacts. Deforestation, pollution, and the unbridled exploitation of natural resources are examples of behaviors that need to be transformed. Similarly, the way we treat one another, whether through war, prejudice, or neglect, must also change. Opportunity for transformation. The plagues of Revelation, as dark as they may seem, also carry a message of hope. They show us that even in the midst of chaos, there is room for redemption and renewal. Humanity has an incredible ability to adapt, learn, and grow. Consider, for example, advances in renewable energy technologies, which offer sustainable alternatives to environmental destruction, or the global movements for equality and social justice, which show that people are willing to fight for a better world. These are evidence that transformation is possible as long as we are willing to work for it. The central message: time is short. If there is one clear lesson in the prophecies of Revelation, it is that time is precious. We cannot afford to wait to act. Every choice we make, no matter how small it may seem, contributes to shaping the future. Revelation challenges us to reflect on profound questions. Are we living according to our values? Are we leaving a positive legacy for the next generations? Are we ready to face the consequences of our actions? The answer to these questions will determine not only the fate of the world, but also the meaning of our existence. Regardless of your view of the apocalypse, the truth is that there is still hope. Humanity has a unique ability to learn from its mistakes and seek redemption. This journey begins with small actions. caring for others, protecting the environment, seeking justice, and cultivating spirituality. If every person does their part, we can turn the plagues of Revelation into a turning point. Instead of destruction, we can find renewal. Instead of judgment, we can seek forgiveness. And instead of chaos, we can build a world of harmony and love. This video is not just a reflection on the plagues of the apocalypse, it is a call to action. No matter who you are or where you are, you have the power to make a difference. Share this message, inspire others, and start your own transformation journey. In the comments, we want to hear your opinion. What do you think of the plagues of the apocalypse? Are they divine prophecies, metaphors for humanity's challenges, or something else entirely? Let's start a conversation, and together, find ways to address the challenges that threaten our future. Thank you for watching, and don't forget, time is short, but the opportunity for transformation is within everyone's reach. See you in the next video.